Welcome to week 133 of Misha Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
I forgot to mention last week when we watched episode 642 on Thursday, we were 30% of the way through Santa Barbara. We watched episode 644 the other day, which originally aired Monday, February 9th, 1987. Keith brings Gina home from the masquerade, and he tries to get a kiss, but she says he can get a kiss from one of the troops surrounding the house. Gina complains to Cece that his party was terrible and everybody left. Cece says, "Oh, the DA liked your costume." And Gina says, "Jealous?" And he says, "Hardly." Then Gina insults Sophia's costume. And then Cece says, "You ally yourself with the one person whose main aim in life is to keep my daughter from freedom. And then you and your friend will go all the way down, straight to bloody hell." So, he is waiting for Gina, I think, to get enough money to make sure they go to jail for a long time for all the stealing. So, remember how Keith didn't hate the Capwells when he first joined the show? Mm-hmm. It was just all about Cruz Castillo. He's learned to hate the Capwells. Victoria says to Mason that they don't even love each other. How can they get married? They have a long talk about that, and eventually she says she can't give him his answer yet. This immediately sends Mason into a spiral. Lionel tells Julia she's going to be a terrific mother, and Julia says, "That's what Mason said just before he said goodbye and good luck." Julia doesn't think Mason should ever know he's the father of her baby. And then she notices Mason is there in the corner already drunk, and he tries to buy them a drink, and then goes on a rant about how terrible Cece is as a father. I think this is just solidifying Julia's resolve not to tell Mason that he's the father. Mm-hmm. So, which of course could string things along for a number of months. He'll have no reason not to just keep trying to marry Victoria.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Mason goes to the Capwell mansion because I guess it's the only home he has, and Cece is disgusted by his drinking. He tells Cece that he asked Victoria to marry him, but she has not given her answer yet. He also says that he doesn't want any of Cece's money and will sign a paper to that effect. "I can get by without your reimbursement or your controlling interest. I can be independent and free from you. I might even be happy."
And this scene it actually comes at the end of the episode, and I really liked the way they ended it. Just the shot. They actually don't, my memory of it anyway, they actually don't really have music. It's just this long, lingering shot of Cece's face at the end of this confrontation.
Mm-hmm. This was another really great Mason scene, the kind that made people think about Santa Barbara decades later. Jake and Haley wake up from their car crash. Haley does not want to go to the hospital, so they go to the purgatory, which is, of course, where everyone else is today. And she puts some ice on her head. Ted arrives to pick up Haley and tells Jake not to call to find out how she is. Back home, Haley apologizes to Ted for running off with Jake. Ted blames Jake for the accident, saying he probably couldn't keep his eyes off you. Ted says he's had enough and drives back to Purgatory to pick a fight with Jake. He punches Jake in the stomach, and Jake hits him once, and then Ted thinks the better of his idea to have a fight with Jake. Jake ends up driving him home, and Ted tells Haley that he got into a fight with Jake over her, and she kisses him. She says, "That's sweet, but a guy like Jake will hit you back."
As Ted has found out.
Kelly has a fever. Kelly tells Jeffrey if they can get to the Lockridge property near the gazebo, they could probably dig through the caved-in tunnel. So this is funny because we were just talking about the tunnel and how I didn't think it was ever used again. And here they are trying to use that very tunnel that would have been a great way in. Jeffrey uses a branch to knock out one of Keith's officers. Now, this is the second person that got brained during their escaping. And uses the officer's walkie-talkie to get the others who are patrolling the Capitol grounds to leave the back free so Kelly can race to the gazebo and check it out. Kelly returns to say there's too much dirt. It would take weeks to dig through. Jeffrey somehow sneaks inside the Capwell house, and we see him sneaking through the atrium, but he can hear Keith giving orders to the guards, especially when he finds out they've clearly been tricked. And so he leaves again and tells Kelly, we got to get out of here. Jake and Ted arrive in their question because, of course, they're searching for anyone who might be sneaking onto the grounds, but Haley vouches for them. But Kelly and Jeffrey manage to sneak into the back of Jake's truck, and they end up getting driven away before anyone spots them. And the next thing you know, they're getting ready to spend the night in this Abernathy stables. Kelly wants to turn herself in to get some peace and freedom, but Jeffrey says, no, I saw the look on your face when we were at the gazebo. For the first time, I could picture you as you used to be. I'm not going to stop until you get that. So, well, we might be sleeping in the Abernathy stables for a while. I don't know how Jake would take to encountering them, but let's hope it's Ted or maybe even Haley, who was the first to encounter them, and then at least they'll have a contact that they can use to make a plan.
Now, I wonder how the Abernathy stables compares to Warren's barn.
Warren's barn is out of town, if I recall correctly, so it wouldn't be an option. I feel like, they're having to clean those stalls every day, so I don't know. I don't know if they're going to be that comfy to sleep in. They're certainly smelly. And that is it for this Monday episode. We saw a Santa Barbara alumnus on, was it Canon? Joe Mascolo, who played, of course, Stefano DiMera, pretending to be a guy named Carlo a few months ago on Santa Barbara. So,
Actually, I think that was the Rockford Files.
The Rockford Files. Okay, that could be. Yeah, we watched Harry-O, The Rockford Files, and Canon this week, and they're all from a similar era. So,
and we've also just started watching the Croft Super Show, which, of course, we already saw Peter Mark Richmond in Electra Woman and Dinah Girl, which was one of the shows associated with the Super Show. But we did peek ahead a little bit, and we do see that a Santa Barbara alumni will be on that show.
I'm not sure what episode. I've actually watched 5 of those episodes while you've been sleeping on Saturday afternoons. But yeah, we had binged through, not binged, we watched one episode of Electra Woman and Dinah Girl, starring Deidre Hall, every Saturday. But then I found out that on Tubi we could watch the whole Croft Super Show, which is kind of as bad as I remember. But it was fun to see Michael Lembeck, who I've actually seen in person. One of the TV show tapings I attended in L.A. he was directing. It might have been a Becker or Everybody Loves Raymond or Friends. I can't quite remember. But
there's a reason why I take my little cat naps in the middle of it.
Yes, we're
it's
trying to
tedious after a while.
Get through. My completist nature needs me to watch every episode of the Croft Super Show, just so I can say I've seen them all. But I do remember, even as a kid, finding them very dull. One interesting thing we found out, though, is that it was taped in Atlanta. I just assumed as a kid those scenes of them walking along a freeway were shot in L.A. Anyway, that's it's kind of in the same quality as Far Out Space Nuts. And they've got a show called The Lost Saucer. That's one of their segments. That's got who was it? John Shuck who's starring? No,
it's
Gomer Pyle. Yeah,
Jim Neighbors
with Ruth Buzzy. And then I don't, other than Michael Lembeck, I don't think I've recognized any of the other actors yet. But yeah, as you say, we be seeing a sighting in the future. So that's it for episode 644. We'll see you after we watch the Tuesday show. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Looks to me like you're trying to drown your troubles.
No, not drown them. Just hold their heads under for a little while and scare the hell out of them.
Well, we can't just sit here.
Well, I'm not saying we should sit here, but we have to be careful. You know, we can't make direct tracks. I mean, let's take this a step at a time.
All right, I'll do whatever you say.
Forever?
Of course, forever.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 645 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Tuesday, February 10th, 1987. Now, we've been watching Knots Landing every Thursday, and I noticed someone who looked familiar on there playing Karen's floor manager on the TV show that she hosts. And then I realized, wait a minute, is that Renfield? And I looked, and it's Sue Bugden, who will be playing Renfield someday when Daniel Trask shows up on the show. I think that was it for sightings. Mason pushes Victoria for an answer to his proposal, and she says she needs more than 12 hours. Mason goes to an interview with Carruthers and Brown to be a full partner and finds Julia there. He tells her she can have it, and then she tells the firm she doesn't want it. So I think she's changed her mind again about how nasty Mason is. Mm-hmm. Alice tells Carolyn and Lionel she's moving in with Gus. And so we have a lot of stuff at Johnny's place today. So Gus interacts with a lot of people. Lionel wants to take Carolyn on a 2-month trip to Tahiti. So while that was playing out, I checked to see if Lionel's going to be leaving for any extended vacations. And he's going to be on the show almost every few days till the end of the year. So they are clearly not going to go to Tahiti. She says this is a bad time for her to go to Tahiti. So he recreates Tahiti in the Lockridge living room. Carolyn tells Gus she's going to tell Alice everything. Lionel sees them hug and leaves Johnny's butt. Carolyn tells him that was just a friendly hug. Do you think Carolyn and Gus might somehow end up back together?
It's possible. I was thinking that, I wasn't surprised that Alice was going to move in with him. So it's possible she'll bring the two of them together. I don't know.
Yeah, Gus has been so much chiller now that he's not in prison or threatened with prison.
Yeah.
Brick has a christening party for Johnny, who is almost 2 years old when Victoria wonders why this giant baby is having a christening party. So we have, for the first time, seen an actor portray Johnny Perkins. Mm-hmm. Or is it Johnny Wallace? Not quite sure what his name is. I guess if they're married, Brick would have had to adopt him, right? Because they got married after he was born. Mm-hmm. Well, let's call him Johnny Wallace.
Let's see if he shows up in the credits and see what name he's given there.
Mm-hmm. We have no credits in this episode, but he didn't have any lines, but hopefully they will credit him. Otherwise, I'll have to track it down. Oh, it's nice to see Santana there, too.
Yeah, that was a nice surprise. And, it was interesting for me because the whole thing between Mason and Victoria, where he's trying to persuade her to marry him, actually echoed to me the aborted marriage between Santana and Mason, where, they were sort of marrying each other for convenience as well. Mm-hmm. Or didn't, as the case may be.
I feel like there wouldn't be anything stopping this one as much, because even if Cruz finds out, I don't know if that would stop the wedding. Apparently Santana has just come back from a big designing job in Los Angeles, which could explain why she has been off the screen in Santa Barbara for the last couple of weeks. Cruz and Eden walk in just as Victoria is holding Johnny, and Victoria gets some motherly feelings as she holds Johnny and looks at Cruz. Santana tells Victoria that Johnny is not Rick's son, but he loves him as much as if he was. And then later Mason tells Victoria that he will love her child as much as if it was his own. Pearl finds out that Julia hasn't told Mason that she's pregnant. Actually, he finds out that she's pregnant too because she's drinking milk. Julia gives Johnny a large teddy bear and then has a fantasy about having a 2-year-old son with Mason. So we got 2 child actors playing 2-year-old boys. One playing young Mason Jr., I guess, and the other playing Johnny Wallace. Presumably, by the time the baby's born, they'll need a younger actor to portray him. Cruz tells Eden that Kelly was probably at the Capwell house last night. Eden figures that they probably entered from the Lockridge property, and Mason finds them at the gazebo, where they spot a Swiss banknote. Mason tells Eden she's turning into quite a detective. This, reminds me of my thought that they might be doing a Nick and Nora Charles type thing where they open their own detective agency. So
Yeah.
that still could be happening. Mason has a nice little talk with Eden and gives her a little kiss. They conclude that Jeffrey and Kelly must have hidden in the back of Jake's truck. So I think next stop for Cruz and Eden Charles is probably the Abernathy stables.
Well, we saw them take on this kind of role a long time ago when we still had the Amanda Lockridge mystery, and I forget what they were trying to track down to an antique store, but this has been part of their relationship when their relationship is going well for quite some time.
Yeah. I assume if they find Kelly and Jeffrey, they will figure out a better place to hide them. Like the Capwell yacht or boathouse. Well, it's probably cold in February. Oh, that's it for this Tuesday episode. So we'll be back after we watch episode 646 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 646 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Wednesday, February 11th, 1987. Carolyn gets a troubling phone call, but won't tell Lionel who called. So that's kind of, I think, maybe a new storyline for her starting. Carolyn tells Gus she's going to tell Alice everything. And then Gus says that he found a place out of town that Carolyn and Alice could go. But Carolyn thinks Alice would find it weird to go out of town just with her, so she convinces Gus to come along. She tells Lionel she's going to take Alice to a cabin at Arrowhead, but does not mention that Gus is coming. Warren is annoyed when he finds out that Lionel is calling the cabin up at Arrowhead to find out where it is so he can crash the party. I think Warren's thought is that since Carolyn told him she's going to handle it alone, Lionel shouldn't really try to get involved.
Yeah, I think Lionel could definitely be endangering his relationship with Carolyn a little bit for doing this.
Of course, he'll see Gus there and come to the wrong conclusion. A very soapy turn of events. Jane and Warren have a date at Johnny's. Warren asks her on a date, and she says it's kind of weird since we live together. So he said, well, what if we just happen to run into each other somewhere, like Johnny's at 7 o'clock? So they have a date, and they dance, and then they kiss when they get to their own front door. I like this Jane and Warren pairing.
Yeah, they go quite well together. Because they're both a little bit outside the dynamics of the house.
Yeah. That's presumably that's why they cast the new Warren, so Jane would have someone to date with, Brian and several others vanishing from the show. Keith is sitting outside. Oh, did you have something?
Nope.
No. Keith is sitting outside the beach house in a van. Gina badgers him about planning a Cayman Island vacation because she's read the Caymans are the new Switzerland for hiding stolen money. Cruz and Eden come up with a plan to distract Keith so that they can go and check out the Abernathy stables to see if Kelly and Jeffrey are actually there. So Eden lures Keith inside the house. First they meet with Keith to ask for his help, and he's so excited when he hears it's to help Kelly. Then Eden goes out to the van and tells Keith, I'm really worried that Kelly's actually, in more danger, being, a hunted fugitive than if she were in jail. So I'm going to tell you where she's hiding. So Keith comes inside, and Cruz says, I don't know anything about this, leaves the room. What he then does is sneaks out the window, and Keith hears him driving away and thinks, did you think you could trick me? Ha ha! He runs to his van and finds that his radio is disabled and the van is disabled. Keith then goes to Johnny's eventually and overhears Gus as he yells to Pearl, hey, how's your new ferry business coming? Now, I don't know what boat Pearl has bought for his new ferry business. It's, just appeared out of nowhere, and I thought, this is just part of the plan to, distract Keith. But he actually appears to have a ferry because Keith forces him to take him and Gina out to the casino, where Keith figures that is where they are hiding Kelly and Jeffrey. And his theory seems to be proven when he hears Kelly and Jeffrey's voice as they get to the casino. But as they search the place, they find, underneath an old lampshade, I believe, a tape recorder with Eden pretending to be Kelly and Jeffrey's voice being voiced by Pearl. Then they hear the sounds of Pearl pulling away from the casino. So Keith and Gina are stranded at the casino.
We've kind of got a theme going of stranded couples between Keith and Gina and Kelly and Jeffrey.
Mm-hmm. Gina thinks, this is great. Now we have time to plan our vacation to the Cayman Islands, which Keith gets very angry about. And he gets worse when she talks about their previous idea to get married. And he admits that, in fact, as a politician with aspirations, there's no way he could marry someone like Gina. She would be a terrible wife for a politician to have. She gets very angry at this and threatens to hand over the tape to Cece. And then he basically threatens to strangle her, I think, at some point, and throw her to the sharks if she ever thinks about crossing him. So this is a side of Keith that we've only ever seen when he's been upset about Katie in the past. But still, they're lovable. A lovable, murderous couple, kind of like the Addams family. Kelly tells Jeffrey that they are 14 miles outside of Santa Barbara, and he wonders how she has divined this information. And he says, I can see the Abernathy brand on these horses and their crest over the door, so I think we're at the Abernathy stables, where I've spent many an hour. While Jeffrey is out scouting, Kelly cleans up the place a bit. She plans to have an outing herself, so she wants to hide the evidence that they are there. And discovers wrapped in a handkerchief a ring, and she when Jeffrey returns, a ring, and she finds a ring, and the inscription on it is from PPC. But before she can mull over who that might be, Jeffrey returns to say there's a cemetery nearby, and then he gets angry when Kelly says, I've seen a ring just like this before somewhere. And says, stop snooping in my stuff. And she says, I don't care about your old girlfriends. So any thoughts on the mysterious ring that Kelly has seen before?
C could stand for Capwell, possibly.
PPC.
And I think Mason's mother was Pamela.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the only initials that come to my mind.
Kelly runs off when he gets angry. And Jeffrey finds her at the cemetery putting flowers on Joe's grave. So that's where this cemetery of ours is, 14 miles outside of town. is where the Santa Barbara Cemetery, with all the many people Kelly Capwell has killed. We didn't see the ghost of Peter there. That would have been too much. So Jeffrey tells her she should just move to England and start a new life, and he gives her the name of a town, but I forgot what it is, Portsmouth or something, or Bournemouth maybe. Start a new life with a new identity. She tells Jeffrey about Joe and says, I was a different person when I was married to Joe. It took me a long time to recover from his death. I'm not even sure I did. I came here to think about what I've become. Maybe I won't ever know how much I've grown until I can love someone like that again. And Jeffrey leaves. So, I don't know. The cameraman seems to be implying that could be Jeffrey. Mm-hmm. They return to the Abernathy stables and run into Cruz and Eden! And there is a heartwarming reunion with Kelly.
And I was very surprised because I was sure when I was watching this that they would just miss each other.
Yes.
And, it would continue, but no.
I know. I thought it was going to rank on because we saw Cruz and Eden arrive. Kelly, of course, had cleaned up all the evidence that they were there. And they find an apple core, which isn't very helpful. And they were just about to leave when Kelly walks in. Or actually... Jeff, let's see, who is it? Kelly meets Cruz first, and Eden's actually in an alcove at first, and then after hugging Cruz, she turns around and there's Eden. So anyway, finally, Kelly Capwell, after how many months has Robin Wright been missing off the canvas? They finally reunited, and this is, one of these storylines that just came out of the fact that Robin Wright wanted to go shoot a movie, and... they had to work around it. The other kind of thing they sometimes would have to work around would be, when there's a writer's strike and people who are not the writers write the show for a few months, and then the writers come back to see what kind of a mess have you left my show in. Let's hope there's never a writer's strike. That's it for the Wednesday episode. We'll be back after we watch episode 647. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
An inflatable life raft.
Great. So big, though. How are you going to get it inflated?
You have the chance to show off your world-famous lungs, darling. Your hot lips. Start blowing.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We finished episode 647 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Thursday, February 12th, 1987. Now, we saw it last night, and today it's the morning of the 6th of December, and somehow we've got to get through 2 episodes today. How will we do it? Stay tuned and watch out. Okay. Thursday's episode, Kelly insists on seeing her family before heading off to another hiding place. They talk about taking her to another country at one point. Cruz comes up with an idea. Ted tells Sophia and Cece the news that Cruz and Eden have marooned Keith and Gina on the oil rig. And they think that they know where Kelly is and are going to find her. Ted insists that he should tell Haley everything. And after a big argument with Cece, he does. Cruz and Eden arrive to tell the news of their meeting with Kelly and to fill in the family on Cruz's plan, and that includes Haley. So I think it's good for Haley that Ted's finally, done exactly what she said, so nothing could go wrong.
Yep, now it's on her to actually live up to her end of it.
Yeah. Mason visits Victoria with a movie and a pizza and an engagement ring, which he says she should wear, while she's thinking it over, as he's not pressuring her to give him an answer. At the casino, after rejecting Gina's idea to start a bonfire, at one point I thought this was going to end up with the casino burning down, but nope. That idea we had that it might burn down someday due to Dylan's homemade wiring still hasn't occurred. Keith finds a life raft, and after telling Gina to blow it up, has her row him back to shore. Now, I think it's, 2 miles off the coast, right? To be outside of the limit, or is it 12 miles? That's quite a row, I think. I mean, you rowed across bodies of water. How many miles have you rowed comfortably?
Oh, I wouldn't say I've rowed that much, and the rowing I did as a kid in a fishing village was in a protected little harbor. So, they're rowing across open sea, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so anyway, they got back surprisingly quick. They end up at, I think it's, what is it called? The place? Purgatory. And Gina points out that, Keith really does need her because she's the one who realized that they were planning to smuggle Kelly back into the country even without being told. She just picked up vibes with her antenna. And Keith does admit that he needs her. Mm-hmm. Although, you never know with Keith if he's just saying this to be expedient at this moment. Keith arrests Cruz, and he calls Mason. Mason arrives and points out to Keith that although he has a big theory about what may have happened today while he was out on the oil rig casino, he has absolutely no evidence. And so Mason manages to get Cruz freed from Keith's office. I feel like that may be the end of it. I don't think Keith really has anything he could do going forward to...
yeah, I think he was just trying to bully Cruz a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Gina finds the family huddled together, and then she tries to get Haley to tell her what's going on. But she says, everyone's too happy around here. But Haley stands her ground and says that they weren't talking about Kelly. Mm-hmm. And Gina doesn't believe her. So I think she now, knows that Haley maybe is on Ted's side more than hers. So that could be, that could put a rift, I think, between Gina and Haley.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
I think this whole thing of Haley now keeping this secret from Gina is already putting a rift on her. Gina phones Keith to say, "Oh, I know they're up to something. The family is plotting something." But as she is telling him, Cece hangs up the phone and goes into a rage. He throws the phone off the table. He throws papers off the table as he chases her around that wicker table. And suddenly, he has a heart attack. He collapses in agony and calls for his pills. Sophia comes running in and says, "What did you do to him? What did you do to him?" And Ted's there as well. Sophia says, "His pills are in the nightstand next to his bed. Run up and get his pills." And Gina stops for a second and doesn't move and contemplates maybe her move. But she does run upstairs. And the next thing you know, the paramedics have arrived. Keith shows up, and the paramedics are taking Cece out on a stretcher and say, "Oh, what's happening here?" Kind of nonchalantly. There's a big to-do. Jeffrey tells Kelly that he has something to do after all this is over, that he's been putting off, but that he will miss her. So this is a nice scenes between Jeffrey and Kelly as I think they tried to see if the other one might want them to hang around in their lives a little longer. Mm-hmm. And then she says, "Is this thing you have to do something to do with your ring?" And of course Jeffrey changes the subject on the ring. And then as Mason blames Gina for Cece's heart attack, the camera zooms in on Mason's ring, and it's exactly the same as Jeffrey's. So I think maybe your idea that PPC might have something to do with Pamela might just be right.
Yeah, and I feel like, maybe he and Mason are brothers, possibly, in which case, so much for a relationship between Jeffrey and Kelly. Or maybe they're half-brothers through Pamela, in which case there would still be a chance for Jeffrey and Kelly.
That's interesting. We need to pull up one of those family trees and just see who's related to who. It's not as bad in Santa Barbara as it is in Salem, where everyone is related to a Horton or a Hernandez or a Demira or a Brady. Victoria arrives at the hospital and tells Mason that she will marry him. Keith thinks that Haley is acting a bit strangely because while the whole family is very upset about Cece's hospitalization, Haley just seems to not want to be there. This whole episode, Keith has just a weird feeling about what's going on. The doctor says that Cece is not expected to survive the night. And Keith and Gina eavesdrop as Eden phones the reverend of the church to say that Cece is dying and to please come to the church immediately. On the other end of the phone, Kelly says, "Is Keith buying it?" And that's when we realize, perhaps a little later than Keith did, that this whole thing is fake. Inside Cece's room, Ted closes the blinds, and Sophia takes off his air mask and grins. Mason reveals to Victoria that Cece is faking it so Kelly can visit the family. Victoria is angry, thinking he just tricked her to get her to agree to marry him, and no amount of protests from Mason's side will convince her. Now, I feel like, it should be pretty easy to convince Victoria that this had nothing to do with her. I mean, this whole thing was so elaborate. Why would this have anything to do with Victoria? I think as she thinks about it, she'll quickly come around, I would hope.
Yeah. And also, the other thing is, now that the whole plot has been revealed, it probably will not go as planned. So, there could be a lot of other twists and turns that will make Victoria see that this was never about her.
Mm-hmm. This has come up very quickly, this whole thing. All in one episode, all this stuff happened that wasn't really even alluded to in a previous episode. So. Oh, that is it for our Thursday episode. And guess what? Just before we recorded, we actually did watch the Friday episode. This is the first time we've ever watched 2 episodes before recording the podcast for the first one, because we wanted to make sure we didn't accidentally mix up our episodes. So I think we managed not to tell you anything that's happening on Friday. And after a quick costume change for Diane, we'll be back for episode 648 of Misha and Diane Watch Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Everybody's too happy around here.
Welcome back.
Hello.
It's been 3 minutes since we recorded the last podcast. And earlier today we watched episode 648 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Friday the 13th of February, 1987. Oh, I guess tomorrow will be Saturday. It will be Valentine's Day. I guess they won't do a Valentine's Day episode unless Jeffrey gives Kelly a present or something. It's morning, and Keith complains that Cece hasn't died because he was predicted not to make it through the night. Suddenly alarms go off in Cece's room, and Cece's fake doctor pronounces that Cece has died. We also have a fake nurse in this episode, too. Sophia and the rest of the family put on a big show, but Keith tells Gina it kind of feels like watching a movie as everything plays out.
It's sort of ironic that it seems to be Sophia's terrible acting that actually seems to trigger his thoughts in this direction.
Yes, she's quite overacting in this, even more so than, Haley is totally uncomfortable with everything and doesn't, tries to disassociate herself from the whole thing as she gets more and more uncomfortable with it, which Keith noticed last time. So the fake doctor comes out and says, "Mrs. Capwell," and both Sophia and Gina say yes. What do you want to have done with the body? And Sophia says it will be moved to the house. We'll have a wake. They don't actually use the word wake, but it's basically it. Gina says, I was going to have him cremated. Sophia and Cece make out in the ambulance as they speed away. I don't know if that's an ambulance or if that's a different type of vehicle. They would take the body to the mortuary, but that is the plan, that the body will go to the mortuary, and then they will sneak Kelly and Jeffrey into the house in the ambulance that will pick Cece up from the mortuary to take him to the house. So that is the plan as we hear it played out. Carolyn joins Jess and Alice at the ski cabin. After a cross-country ski, they return to the cabin, and Carolyn tells Alice that she is her mother. Alice takes it kind of like you'd expect she would take it, and almost immediately asks if she knew she was in the hospital all those years. And Carolyn, of course, saying that she was going to tell Alice everything, admits that she did know. And Alice is angry at both of them, it appears, and runs out into the snow.
Now, I was just glad that Carolyn was able to get the news out before Lionel came bursting in.
Oh, that's right. I even forgot about
Because
Lionel.
I think Lionel was planning to go up there and surprise everyone. But that didn't happen. She was able to get the information out, which was really nice. Alice is wearing a shirt that I think anyone who grew up in the 80s probably had some version of this shirt. So it was kind of nice. Kind of a little blast from the past to see that. But I certainly understand Alice's reaction.
Yeah, I mean, she's just wearing a sweater. It's not like a snowsuit, so presumably she won't go out and get lost on the ski slope somewhere and have to have a search party sent out for her because she's not quite dressed for the weather. But hopefully, maybe she'll run straight into Lionel in the next episode. Haley wants out of the plan, but Ted says, well, don't you remember when Gina faked her own death and didn't tell you about it? So this is no worse than that. But she really wants out, but Ted says, well, can you just do it for me? And I believe she does, because she is the one who has to bring their clothes to Kelly and Jeffrey. Kelly carves Jeffrey a duck as a memento of their time together, and he finds her a bathtub and somehow also some bubbles. Maybe the horses like bubble baths. So next thing we see is Kelly in the bath. Reminding me of that old-timey western town with Nick that she was in. She loves taking baths in creepy old tubs. Haley arrives to bring them clothes, and then an ambulance arrives to pick them up. The ambulance arrives at the Capwell mansion with Cece in the coffin and Kelly and Jeffrey hiding. Keith is suspicious as Cece's coffin is brought into the Capwell house and put into the living room. At one point, it actually gets jammed on the tiles, and they rope Cece and a couple of police officers. They rope Keith in to help carry the coffin into the living room. And Gina says this would have been so much easier if he'd been cremated. Meanwhile, Cruz sneaks Jeffrey and Kelly into the wine cellar. And a little bit later, Keith follows Mason as he heads down there. And we actually see Mason go to the far back right of the atrium and go through one of the doors in the back that we never really see opened. And we actually saw it open for the first time. We saw a tiny bit of a hallway and a turn to the left, presumably to the stairs, but also a little window out into the backyard. So that's interesting to know that there's definitely nothing, at least in that little section, nothing built up there, that the rest of the house is, I guess, above or below. But we see a bit of sunlight coming through a tiny window. So that's the thing, the first time we've ever seen that door opened. Mason sneaks downstairs and quick hugs to Kelly and Jeffrey, but he hears someone else coming down and they quickly hide as Keith comes down, and Mason pretends, I was just getting a bottle of champagne to celebrate my father's passing. Care to join me? So it looks like Keith is, not too suspicious. I think he believes this whole thing, And he says, well, why don't you... Mason says to Keith, why don't you just stay down here? You know where the good stuff is. And you still live down here, didn't you? But Keith doesn't want to let Mason out of his sights, and so follows Mason back up the stairs. And then Kelly says to Jeffrey, Mason has the same ring as you. I just saw it while he was standing there. And Jeffrey said, there must be hundreds of rings like that. You should worry more about yourself getting caught, because you almost just were by Keith Timmons.
Now, it occurs to me that this ring, or both the rings, actually look a little bit like the onyx ring that Barnabas had in Dark Shadows. Not quite as big, not quite as gaudy, but I know that onyx signet rings are kind of a fashion staple for men, so that's not unusual, but it did just remind me of that.
Keith takes a carnation from one of the bouquets that the house has been decorated with. Everyone, of course, is dressed in their funeral garb at this point. And then we see him take a hat pin from Gina's hair, and we get the idea right away about what he is planning. But he actually waits quite a while for his plan. Everyone, all the family has, takes their turns with Cece. Gina comes into the living room as Mason and Cece are chatting, which is, I think, a little bit dangerous. And Mason motions. He hears someone come in, so Cece plays dead again. And pretends he doesn't know Gina's there, so he gives a long, insulting speech to Cece, which Cece has to lie there and take. Gina says, "Oh, I can't look at Cece's body. He's starting to look like Elvis." So Mason leaves her alone with Cece, telling her these will be the last words that you ever say to them. And she tells him that she didn't want him to die, not this time anyway. I do wish I told you where the tape was hidden. It's hidden in the... no, it doesn't matter now that you're dead. Keith uses the search warrant as an excuse to go in to see Cece. And the family watches as he makes a long, rambling speech about he was always admired Cece since when he was in junior high school. He heard about Cece evicting a bunch of unfortunate small businesses along the coast so he could make a fortune by selling the land that he owned to make room for a highway that he had lobbied to get pushed through. And Keith sprinkles the petals from his flower on Cece's forehead, but Cece manages not to flinch. And then, when he least expects it, Keith pulls the hat pin that he's attached to his tie and jabs it into Cece's leg. And Cece bolts upright in his coffin, starts to attack Keith. Cruz and Mason manage to pull Keith away, and Keith starts running around the house shouting, "Kelly's in the house! Kelly's in the house!" And the officers and him rush to try to figure out where Kelly is hidden. And that is the end of week 133 of Santa Barbara, and the end of week 133 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara. We will see if Kelly and Jeffrey are caught this week.
I'm hoping they're having tea with minks at the Lockridge house right now.
Well, the plan was to sneak them out in the coffin, and I thought, Kelly and Jeffrey would be in the same coffin. That would be a little cozy ending to their adventure. But I guess that is not going to happen.
We'll see.
We'll see in week 134 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Of course, I did figure that I'm dealing with a family of ham actors.
Ham? Who you calling a ham?
Well, if you ain't no ham, you're at least a sausage leg.
I'm asking you to go on a cruise for a month.
I mean, Alice expects little or nothing from me because she still doesn't even know I'm her mother.
Tell her when we get back.
Oh, then what do I say? Hi, I'm back from a cruise. Here's a souvenir. By the way, I'm your mother.